More than 21 years after the death of Jam Master Jay, one-third of the legendary hip-hop trio Run-DMC, a jury has found two men guilty of his murder.
Breaking news. Two men found guilty of murder in the killing of Run-DMC's Jam Master Jay. Jurors found Carl Jordan Jr., Jay's godson, and Ronald Washington, Jay's childhood friend, guilty on all counts.
Welcome back to Fame Drops. February 2024, Queens courtroom history finally caught up. After 22 long years, the killers of Jam Master Jay were convicted, and the weight of hip-hop's most haunting mystery came crashing down. For 2 decades, nobody dared to speak. Witnesses stayed quiet, scared stiff. Streets buzzed with whispers tying the hit to Queen Street politics and that infamous ambush when 50 Cent got lit up with 9 shots just months before. To really understand what went down, we gotta rewind. Back to the night hip-hop lost a king, and the truth got buried deep in shadows. 2 men, not strangers, but men from Jay's own circle, were nailed for the murder. The 2002 studio shooting that robbed the world of Run-DMC's DJ came roaring back in a February courtroom, tension so thick you could slice it. When the jury dropped the verdict, the names hit like thunder. Carl Jordan Jr., Jay's godson, now 40, and Ronald Washington, 59, an old friend crashing at Jay's sister's crib at the time. The judge's words had barely left his mouth when chaos exploded. Washington turned to the jury yelling, "You all just killed 2 innocent people." Jordan's crew in the gallery erupted, shouting and cursing. Jordan himself didn't even flinch. He simply turned, calm as ever, and told them, "I love you all." Imagine that.
2002, Jason Mizell, also known as Jam Master Jay of the legendary hip-hop group Run-DMC, was murdered in cold blood in his recording studio in Queens, New York. Now, it's taken more than 20 years, but today, a jury in this courthouse found Carl Jordan Jr. and Ronald Washington guilty of murder.
After 22 years of dead ends, silence, and fear, the courtroom walls shook with raw drama. But this wasn't just about solving a cold case. This was about peeling back a story that stretched way beyond Jay's death. Jam Master Jay wasn't just Run-DMC's turntable wizard. He was the man who gave a hungry Queens rapper named 50 Cent his first shot at the mic. Jay taught him how to count bars, how to build tracks, how to sound sharp before Get Rich or Die Trying was even a dream. Before the fame, there was Jay, putting a young kid from South Jamaica in the booth, showing him how to turn struggle into sound. Yet months before Jay's murder, that same kid, 50, was ambushed in a hail of bullets, 9 shots ripping into him on the street, and the rumors never stopped. Were the 2 hits somehow connected? The streets talked and the story wouldn't die. When the verdict finally dropped, 50's response was cold, sharp, and quick. On Instagram, he threw up a screenshot of the news with the caption, "Welp, that's all folks. R.I.P. Jam Master Jay." Short, but heavy. The message? Clear. The world finally had convictions, but the shadows, the why, still stretched back to Queens, back to politics, and back to that October night in 2002.
And I'm Candace Gibson, both men standing trial for the 2002 murder of the Run-DMC superstar, found guilty on all charges.
Enjoying the video so far? Smash that like button and subscribe to Fame Drops so you're here for the next one. It was a wet Wednesday in Queens, Merrick Boulevard glistening under the streetlights. Inside 24/7 studio, Jay was laid back, controller in hand, playing video games with his boy Uriel Tony Rincon. Across the room, his business manager Lydia High flipped through papers. The vibe? Chill, safe, nothing unusual, but danger had already crept in. Unnoticed, someone had slipped through the fire escape. Later ID'd as Jay Bryant, he unlocked the way for the real hitmen. Moments later, Carl Jordan Jr. and Ronald Washington climbed those stairs. Jordan, Jay's godson, walked in first. Jay's face lit up. That family glow, that trust. They hit each other with a half handshake, casual and warm. But in a flash, everything turned upside down. Jordan pulled out a gun, raised it, and aimed straight at Jay. The words barely left Jay's mouth before the room exploded. One shot, close range, straight to his head. Jay collapsed instantly, lifeless on the floor. A second bullet ripped into Rincon's leg, leaving him screaming in pain. Washington turned cold-blooded, pointing his gun at Lydia High and barking at her to get down. Face pressed against the floor, terrified, Lydia couldn't see what unfolded next. And Rincon, bleeding out in shock, stayed silent when police came knocking. The 2 gunmen disappeared as fast as they came, ghosts vanishing into the night.
In Queens, taking the life of the man known as Jam Master Jay. His real name,
Jason Mizell, one of the founders of the groundbreaking rap group Run-DMC.
And here's the crazy part. The studio sat just 3 minutes from the 103rd precinct, but the cameras, worthless. 4 cameras, 0 help. Not a single frame of footage survived. Only one person outside the room had even a glimpse, Tanya Edwards, a receptionist nearby. She remembered seeing a woman in a floppy brown hat leading a man in a velour tracksuit toward the studio right before the shots rang out. At first, she swore it looked like Lydia High. Years later, she admitted she wasn't so sure. Seconds, that's all it took. An execution carried out not by enemies from the shadows, but by men Jay trusted like family. Queens was in shock. The streets buzzing with grief that night, but inside the studio, silence. Fear shut mouths tighter than police tape. Lydia and Rincon, the 2 people who could have blown the case wide open, barely said a word. Just like in the unsolved deaths of Tupac and Biggie, the case drowned in whispers, rumors, and street theories. But the real truth was simpler and scarier. The witnesses knew the killers, and they were terrified. Prosecutors later admitted it openly. Witnesses inside that studio knew exactly who pulled the trigger, but fear of retaliation kept them frozen.
Jam Master Jay was working in a recording studio here in Jamaica. He and a 25-year-old male Hispanic were relaxing in a lounge near the studio when a man walked into the studio, gun drawn, and opened fire. Mizell was struck once in the head and killed.
Everyone in the neighborhood lived by a brutal code. Snitches get stitches. Speak up, and you could end up just like Jay. No wonder both Lydia and Rincon lied at first, trimming details, holding names back. Rincon didn't even tell the truth until 2017, 15 years later, when he finally cracked and pointed his finger at Carl Jordan Jr. as the shooter. By then, the damage was done. Cameras were useless, disabled, missing, or conveniently blank. To Jay's brother Randy Allen, it was obvious. This wasn't sloppy. This was an inside job. Fear, loyalty, betrayal, they locked this case in a vault for decades. Only shifting alliances and new courage finally began to crack it open.
Tonight, the questions focus on witnesses and security cameras. The studio where Jay was shot is outfitted with several security cameras, but did they capture the killer?
But with silence ruling the streets, rumor filled the void like wildfire. Barbershops, street corners, block parties, everybody had their own version of the truth. And one theory refused to die. That Jam Master Jay's death was tied to Queens' most feared drug lord, Kenneth Supreme McGriff, and the rising tension around Jay's young protege. 50 Cent McGriff wasn't some small-time hustler. He was the Supreme team's boss, running Queens' drug empire in the 80s and 90s. By the early 2000s, his name still carried equal parts fear and respect. But years earlier, 50 Cent had lit a match when he dropped Ghetto Koran, a track that named names and pulled the covers off Queens' underworld. The streets say McGriff didn't like that one bit. And just months later, in May 2000, 50 was ambushed outside his grandmother's home. 9 bullets tore through him. Many swore McGriff orchestrated it. 50 survived, but the hit put him on a blacklist. Record execs backed away, terrified of crossing Supreme's shadow.
The killer passed a total of 4 security cameras on the way to the murder, at the door, up the stairs, and in the hallway leading to the studio, pulled a .40 caliber gun, put on a ski mask, and knocked over a woman as he opened the door. He then fired 3 shots, killing Mizell and injuring 25-year-old Ureko Rincon.
But Jam Master Jay, he didn't budge. He kept 50 close, recording with him when no one else would. And that loyalty, some believe, might have signed his death warrant. Federal investigators even dug into whether Jay's refusal to cut ties with 50 made him a target in McGriff's world. The streets whispered. Murder Inc., the label connected to McGriff, flexed muscle to keep 50 boxed out of the industry. Fear, threats, intimidation, that was the word. But officially, the theory never stuck.
Jason was an amazing, talent. He loved everybody. He was, he could never say no, because he just didn't push people away. And he loved everybody, and he just couldn't say no. And I think that this contributed to this, where we're at today.
McGriff shrugged it all off, saying he didn't even know 50 personally. He admitted he'd heard of Jay, but claimed they'd never even crossed paths. The feds eventually dropped his name from filings. But in the streets, once the rumor hit, it stuck like glue. Another layer of legend in a case already drowning in shadows. And McGriff wasn't the only name floating around. With real leads missing, theories spread like wildfire. Some whispered about money, One wild claim said Jay's own business partner, Randy Allen, had a $500,000 life insurance policy on him and had him killed to cash in. Police chased it down, but nothing concrete ever came from it. Others swore old grudges and bad blood were behind it. The more silence stretched, the louder the stories grew. Curtis Shoon, once a familiar face in Queen's street game, got dragged into the whispers too. The talk?
1980s. But years later, his fame was fading and the money was running out, so he turned to asking, according to prosecutors,
that he ordered Jay's murder over a debt, but Shoon shut it down fast, saying Jay had paid him back years before, and investigators never found a shred of evidence to prove otherwise. Then came the wildest rumor of them all, something straight out of a tabloid headline. Word spread that Kenneth Supreme McGriff was having an affair with Jay's wife, Terry, but the theory collapsed instantly. McGriff was under constant federal surveillance at the time, and there wasn't a single hint of such a relationship. Still, the bigger problem for detectives wasn't just separating fact from fantasy. It was that every rumor came with its own list of enemies, motives, and deadly possibilities. The streets were watching, but lips stayed sealed. Nobody talked, and the truth about who really walked into 24/7 studio that night and why stayed buried under years of silence. That tangled web of rumors, false leads, and dead ends left the investigation spinning its wheels. But underneath all the gossip about street beefs, old debts, and music industry drama was a much deeper story. To understand why Jam Master Jay was killed, you've got to understand the life he lived. Jason Mizell, born January 21, 1965 in Brooklyn, grew up in Hollis, Queens, and by the early 80s had transformed into Jam Master Jay, the man who turned Run-DMC into hip-hop's breakthrough powerhouse. Alongside Joseph Run Simmons and Daryl DMC McDaniels, Jay flipped music on its head. He wasn't just spinning records, he was rewriting the rulebook. Run-DMC smashed barrier after barrier.
Mizell had also been selling cocaine. And in August of 2002, he received 10 kilograms on consignment to sell in the Maryland area.
First rap group to go gold, first to go platinum, first to dominate MTV, and the first to crash mainstream TV stages like American Bandstand. Their 1986 classic Raising Hell went platinum, packed with hits like It's Tricky and It's Like That, not to mention their game-changing crossover with Aerosmith on Walk This Way. That collab dragged rap into the rock world and forced pop culture to finally pay attention. They weren't just stars, they were role models. Run-DMC pushed anti-drug campaigns, recorded public service announcements, and used their music to keep young fans away from gangs and violence. Their clean image made them legends, loved in the same neighborhoods they came from. By the time Run-DMC landed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2009 and scored hip-hop's first ever Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016, Jay's place in history was untouchable. But the shine on stage didn't always match the struggles off it. Behind the flashing lights, the magazine covers, and the awards, Jay was facing battles few people saw. Financial stress, personal problems, things the public had no clue about. And it wasn't the crazy street rumors that pulled him into danger, but these real, quiet struggles that pushed him closer to the drug game and toward the motive for his murder. By the late 90s, the roar of sold-out crowds had faded. Run-DMC, once unstoppable, was past its prime.
You can holler at me if you with me. So it's a bridge area almost on the record. And I learned to do those different things under Jay's tutelage, so you know, he's definitely been influential.
The tours got smaller, the checks got thinner, and the culture they helped build had already moved on to a new wave of stars. For Jay, the man who had once stood at the center of hip-hop's biggest revolution, the math wasn't adding up anymore. Back in 1989, Jay launched JMJ Records, a label that had discovered the hardcore crew Onyx and later gave a hungry Queens MC named 50 Cent his first real chance. But by the late 90s, the music industry had shifted. JMJ Records wasn't pulling enough weight to cover the bills, let alone handle the financial pressure Jay was carrying. And that pressure, behind the curtain, was about to push him into a whole different world, one far more dangerous than music charts. The weight on Jay's shoulders was crushing. By the early 2000s, he owed the IRS nearly $500,000 in back taxes, interest, and penalties. But pulling back, that wasn't Jay's style. He was known for his generosity, for never turning his back on his people. His mother, his cousins heading to college, his wife and kids. He even paid off his sister's mortgage.
Did Jam Master Jay really work with 50 to kind of help him structure his raps and everything?
Jam Master Jay taught 50 structure.
If someone in his circle needed help, Jay found a way to say yes, but all those yeses came at a cost. Behind the clean, anti-drug image the world adored stood a man boxed in, drowning in debt with fewer and fewer ways out. And in that pressure cooker, Jay made a fateful move, stepping into a business he'd always stood against. That choice tied him to the very streets he once warned kids to stay away from, and to the same people who would later stand accused of taking his life. Bills didn't care about legacy, and the IRS wasn't impressed by platinum plaques. With the money drying up and pressure climbing, Jay looked for ways to hold it all together. The house, the family, the friends depending on him. Prosecutors say that's when he quietly stepped into a role nobody ever imagined for him: middleman. He wasn't slinging on corners, and he wasn't running a cartel. This was a side hustle, arranging kilogram-level deals across New York, just enough to patch the gap between what he owed and what he earned. At first, it stayed low-key, manageable. Then came Uncle. That was Jay's name for his supplier, who turned out to be none other than Terry Southwest T. Flannery, co-founder of the infamous Black Mafia family. In the drug world, Southwest T was like a unicorn: reach, resources, and a reputation that made him untouchable. With Uncle in the mix, Jay's side hustle grew. More product, bigger deals, heavier money. But with that growth came shadows, danger, rivalries.
But after a disagreement between Washington and another participant, Mizell cut Washington and Jordan out of the deal.
And the type of company that never forgot a debt or forgave a mistake. But long before the whispers about Uncle, Jay had poured his heart into something else, someone else. Back in '96, when most of the industry wrote Curtis 50 Cent Jackson off as just another rough-edged kid from Queens, Jay saw the diamond in the dirt. He didn't just sign 50 to JMJ Records, he mentored him. Inside the studio, Jay drilled him on the craft: how to make hooks that stick, how to structure songs so they hit hard from the first bar. Jay taught me about choruses, about counting bars with a metronome, 50 later recalled in a BET interview. He made me think about songs, not just rhymes. DJ Clark Kent remembered Jay predicting, "This kid's gonna be huge." And Tony Yayo backed it all up, saying Jay was the one who really put 50 on. Jay's mission was bigger than music.
His two friends, Carl Jordan and Ronald Washington, were charged with murdering Mizell after they learned that they were about to be cut out of a $200,000 drug deal.
He wanted 50's talent to rise above the street politics and gangster energy that haunted him. The real tragedy? Jay never lived to see what came next. The hit records, the sold-out tours, the global superstardom. And worse, that very connection to 50 Cent would later fuel one of the earliest and most persistent theories about why Jay was taken out. The night before the shooting, the vibe was pure joy. October 29th, 2002. Inside 24/7 studio, Jay couldn't stop talking about the news. After years of grind, 50 had just sealed his deal with Dr. Dre and Eminem. Jay's cousin, Stephen Watford, remembered it clear as day. He was so happy about 50 getting signed to Dre. We laughed, we cried. It meant so much to him. That night felt like a victory lap. Jay moved through the room like a proud coach on championship night, clapping backs, replaying memories, reminiscing about the trip they'd taken to Milwaukee to celebrate the Shady Records signing. He floated through the studio with pride, as if his student had just won the biggest prize in the game. Imagine this: just 24 hours after that celebration, the same studio was silent. The laughter, the tears of joy, the pride in seeing 50's big break, all of it now just ghosts in the air. The bond Jay had built, the future he dreamed of, he'd never get to see it reach its peak. The whispers across Queens pointed in one direction. To many, it felt too easy to believe. Jam Master Jay had stood shoulder to shoulder with 50 Cent, even when half the industry refused to stand anywhere near him. Back in 2000, 50 had already survived the ambush outside his grandmother's house. 9 bullets ripped into him, and somehow, he walked away alive. People said that hit came from Ghetto Koran, the track where 50 exposed Queen's underworld. That song alone had sparked fury, and the fallout was heavy. Soon came the talk of a blacklist. An unspoken warning spread through boardrooms and studios alike. Don't touch 50 Cent.
Today's verdict cannot bring Mr. Mizell back, but my sincere hope is that it brings some closure and solace to his family, his friends, his fans, and all those who love and appreciate.
His name was Poison, whispered to be tied to Murder Inc. and Kenneth Supreme McGriff. But Jay, he didn't flinch. He kept his studio doors open for 50 when no one else would. He risked it all for loyalty. Some saw that as bravery, others saw it as reckless, even suicidal. To fans and investigators alike, it seemed clear the streets had silenced Jay as punishment for defying that blacklist. But when the truth came out, it was darker, messier, and smaller than anyone expected. It wasn't rap wars, it wasn't blacklists, it wasn't even McGriff. It all came down to 10 kilos of cocaine and betrayal. In August 2002, Jay took drugs on consignment, worth nearly $200,000, destined for Maryland. He brought in Ronald Washington and his godson, Carl Jordan Jr., to help move the product. But things fell apart fast. Another dealer, Ralph Yachty Mulgrave, refused to work with Washington. Too much bad blood. Jay made a choice. Washington and Jordan were out. To them, that cut wasn't just money. It was personal. Betrayal in their world demanded blood. Prosecutors later called it a cold-blooded crime fueled by greed and revenge. Witnesses finally broke their silence after nearly 20 years. Painting the scene, Washington held the door with a gun while Jordan stepped up to Jay and fired point blank. Afterwards, they bragged, one even saying that if Jay were alive, he'd do it again. When the guilty verdicts came down, it wasn't just closing a file. It was the final answer to a mystery that haunted hip-hop for over 2 decades. The world learned that Jay's murder wasn't the fallout of some epic rap beef. It was the betrayal of men he trusted, men he helped. And that's the bitter irony. Jam Master Jay, the man who stood tall in the face of music industry politics, who refused to abandon 50 Cent when it was dangerous to be his friend, wasn't taken out by those battles. He was betrayed by greed, by people inside his own circle. The story of Jam Master Jay doesn't end clean, it doesn't tie up neat. But finally, it ends with the truth. What do you think about this story? Was it loyalty that cost Jay his life, or greed that destroyed everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people hear the truth behind hip-hop's most haunting murder.